Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Selling Greenville, your favorite real estate podcast here in Greenville, South Carolina. I'm your host as always, Stan McCune, realtor right here in Greenville, South Carolina, and you can find all of my contact information in the show notes if you need to reach out to me for any of your local real estate needs. And just a reminder as always, please hit the little like button, review, subscribe to the show, particularly subscribe, right? That way you don't miss future episodes and things of that nature. But if you could just support the show as well by simply liking it, just leave a little rating, leave a little review. I would greatly appreciate if you guys could do that. I don't really have anything in particular prepared for this episode. I just want to go on a little bit of a rant. And we'll just see where this rant takes us, okay? Every now and then I do this. It's my show. I can do whatever I want. And I want to go on a little rant about a major misconception about real estate that I'm hearing more and more, and I believe it's mostly Gen Z, but it's also some millennials as well. And it's sentiment that I'm hearing from them with regard to why they are locked out of buying housing, why they are locked out of being able to be homeowners. And I'll just start with this. Depending on what numbers you look at, the average first-time home buyer right now is somewhere between 37 and 40 years old. That is very, very old in terms of any historical norm for the United States of America. We normally see home buyers much earlier in their life than the late 30s or perhaps even early 40s. That's highly unusual. And that's a phenomenon that's really only happened in more recent years. And so you've got a lot of angry millennials, a lot of angry Zoomers or Gen Z people who, will just go online and, get on their keyboards and start cranking out tweets and Facebook messages and Substacks and all these different things. Oftentimes they're trying to predict, when the next crash is going to happen. One of my favorite is Melody Wright, who is considered to be a subject matter expert, keeps predicting that a crash is going to happen, and it doesn't happen. There's another guy, Nick Zarelli or something like that. He's another one of these guys. Keeps predicting a crash is going to happen. It never happens, right? Everyone thinks that 2008 is going to repeat, but the underlying fundamentals of the housing market are so different than 2008. And the one thing I always point people to is that foreclosures are and have been for quite some time now near record lows, okay? That was very different. And between 2008 and 2010, they were at record highs. So how do you go from record lows to, or how do you repeat 2008 without repeating that very important detail? And the only way we could do that is from going from record lows to record highs overnight. And I don't see it. I don't see how that could possibly happen. And listen, I'm not saying that there's not going to be another crash that happens at some point. I'm just saying I don't see it happening this year. I don't see it happening next year. Now, a couple years out from now, like 2028, that's a long time in terms of real estate years. I'm recording this in January 26. We could certainly see something in 2028, but I don't know, right? We would have to see some major shifts in the market over the course of the next 2 years in order for that to happen. And so that's the groundwork for where I'm going with all of this. Now, here is the thing that I have been seeing more recently, because I've been seeing, and for some reason I'm holding a pen now. I'm definitely on a soapbox here. I've never held a pen while recording an episode of this podcast in nearly 6 years I've been doing this podcast. So who knows what we're in for here. So here's something that I've only heard in more recent months, right? I've been hearing the doomerism that, we're going to have a 2008. I believe it's Melody Wright that said it's going to actually be worse than 2008. The crash that's coming. It's going to be worse. Absolutely no data behind that. She might have some data that she believes, but no data that, in my opinion, actually supports the claim. Okay. So I've been hearing the doomerism for 4 years now. That's a common thing. But the thing that has happened recently that is different, a different shift, is I keep hearing people, and this is what happens. They gaslight you, right? These doomers, they have to keep changing their arguments because their arguments don't work. They don't have data. All they have is vibes and anger, right? They're angry because they can't buy a house, and none of their friends can buy houses. And so they have to come up with ways of funneling this anger and channeling this anger, and they channel it with bad arguments online about why the crash hasn't happened and what's going on. So here's the thing: one of the arguments that they made, and I'm going somewhere with this. One of the arguments that they made for a long time was, inventory is shooting up. Inventory is, here's what we've been waiting for. We've been waiting for this crazy influx of inventory. Once inventory shoots up, prices come down, right? Simple supply and demand. If you've got more homes for sale than you've got buyers, that means the prices are going to come down. And I told you guys for years, I've been telling you guys for years, that is not what's going to happen this time around, for the simple reality that sellers have so much equity in their homes that they don't have to sell for a profit, right? Now, everyone wants to sell for a profit. Nobody wants to, if they bought a home for $500,000 a few years ago, they don't want to sell it for $450,000 now. But if they've got $100,000 in equity, they absolutely can sell it for $450,000 if they really, really need to, right? So this is the thing that is dramatically different than in 2008. Where they bought the $500,000 house with no money down, and then within a couple of years they couldn't afford it anymore, and they didn't have any equity in it. They were forced to sell, and they had to end up foreclosing instead. So that is, again, a very different thing than 2008. Another thing that's very different than 2008 is the way loans have been underwritten, the way banks have approached lending, and the ability for homeowners to get loans restructured if they run into a situation where they might end up being foreclosed, okay? So this is why we can have a dynamic where supply, inventory, is going up, but prices are either not going up, not going down, or maybe in some markets going down a little bit. There are some, not in South Carolina, but there are some places in the U.S. where prices are going down a little bit. Louisiana has had some of that. Idaho has had some of that. Texas, Florida has had some of that. And so it has happened in a few places. But for most of the U.S., prices are still going up despite inventory going up. What in the world is going on there? And so now, as these doomers have realized that their whole premise, right? They were waiting for all of these years for the bubble, the real estate bubble to pop. And they said, here's what's going to cause it to pop: rising inventory. And it didn't happen. And if you listened to last week's episode, you know that, assuming that this follows my market stats episode for the month of December, the December market stats. If you're listening to that, then you know that actually inventory has kind of sharply came down in the month of December in Greenville. And I already said I'm going to be tracking that super closely because that's an interesting turn of events if that trend continues. But as the doomers have realized that their entire premise is wrong, they've shifted to a new phrase that I've been hearing. And this is the whole genesis of this episode, is me just being angry about this thing that I keep seeing and hearing people saying, and it's this: we don't need more homes on the market, and we don't need lower mortgage rates. We just need prices to go down, okay? We don't need more supply. We don't need lower mortgage rates. We just need for home prices to go down. Okay, sure. I get that that's what you need. But the implication with all of these posts is that's not just what we need, that's what's actually going to happen. And they have absolutely no data, no model, no substance behind how this is going to happen. How we are going to somehow see prices on real estate go down. The only way that prices go down is with increased supply. And guess what? Even though I just said that prices haven't, for the most part, gone down with the increased supply, the rate of appreciation absolutely has gone down. So it has had an impact. There just hasn't been enough supply to hit the market to force the price down. And because of a dynamic I said before, where sellers are not forced sellers, they don't have to sell their home for pennies on the dollar. So they don't have to, let's say that you are that homeowner that bought your home for $50,000, and let's say that now it is worth only $450,000. You bought it for $500,000. You're going to sell it for a loss of $50,000. Most sellers are just like, no, I'm just going to stay here. I can afford to stay here. I can restructure my loan if I need to. I can do all sorts of things. And so there are very few forced sellers in this market. I've already told you guys that in the Greenville market, if you listen to my content, the Greenville market, we have total number of foreclosures the past year that sold was less than 1%. Less than 1% of our sales in the Greenville market were foreclosures. It was like 0.5%. That's crazy. We need foreclosure. If prices are going to go down, foreclosures are the only way that happens. It's not happening, guys. And so this is what's so frustrating to me is all of these. I understand the anger. I understand why people that are, in their early 30s and they've just been on the hamster wheel, trying to buy a home, trying to raise a family, trying to, or maybe trying to get to the point where they can have a family, trying to work their way up the corporate ladder, and there is no end in sight. There's no light at the end of the tunnel. I completely understand why they're angry and they just want to go online and just say, well, this is all just a myth. Everything's going to come crashing down. Prices are going to come down, and it doesn't matter that they haven't come down despite the increase in inventory. Okay, if that makes you feel better, great. But it doesn't work. It doesn't work because you're ignoring the core concept of supply and demand. This is how it works. And what I'm concerned about is that these people who are already showing that they have a lot of NIMBYism, right? NIMBYism stands for not in my backyard-ism. They don't want homes to be built. And so this could be a new argument for why we shouldn't build homes. There's already a bunch of bad ones out there. This could be a new one that is like, well, building homes doesn't help housing affordability, so why build homes? That's where I could see this going, and that would be a really big mistake. That would cause housing affordability to really go in the wrong direction, right? We're seeing housing affordability we've seen it get a little bit better the past few years as incomes have come up and homes haven't appreciated at the rate that they had been. Mortgage rates came down from 8% down to right around 6%. And so these things have all allowed housing affordability to go in the right direction. But if we stop building, we're in trouble. The housing affordability immediately goes through the roof, right? In a bad way. The concept of affordability is going to be completely gone if we do that. So what even is the implication that people are making when they say we don't need more homes on the market, we just need home prices to go down? The only thing I can figure that these people are implying is that sellers are overvaluing their homes. Now, that is true, okay? Every seller, I shouldn't say every, but I mean, listen, if I take 100 listing appointments in a year, people looking to sell their homes, 95 out of 100 are going to overvalue their homes. That's just the way it is. We all think our home is the best home in the neighborhood. We all think our home is has gone so high, has gone up in value, and we've done so many fantastic updates that none of our neighbors have done. And our home's clearly worth more than theirs. I mean, look, our yard so much more level than the neighbor's sloped yard. Like, come on. Like, doesn't that add like $50,000 of value? These are the sorts of things that I hear in my job all the time. And so if the implication by these doomers is that homes are being overvalued by sellers, yes, I agree. I fully agree. The problem is it doesn't matter. It literally does not matter. Again, if you have, let's say that you have, let's go back to the example I've used a few times. Someone that bought a $500,000 home, they're assuming their home has gone up in value. So they're valuing their home at $525, but it's really worth $450. The only way that it matters that they have overvalued their home is if they're not able to sell it for $450 and then they end up foreclosing. And I just now dismantled the whole argument that that's going to happen. Yeah, in niche cases, right? 0.5 percentage point of homes in Greenville that sold were foreclosures. So yeah, it happens every now and then. But it's hard to buy those foreclosures, right? You're competing with a lot of people. There has to be a whole lot more foreclosures on the market than there are right now for it to make any dent in the market. You know what 2008 was like? So you can go on, right now, you go on HUD Home Store. Be careful, because there are some knockoff sites that take advantage of that name, because it's kind of a cheesy name, to be completely honest. But HUD, our government, Housing and Urban Development, has a cheesy named website called the HUD Home Store. If they still named it that. I don't know if Trump has changed that or not, but last I was on there, it was still called that. And I think it is still called that to this day. So back during the recession, I was looking for housing, right? I was looking for my first home. I was renting. I was tired of renting. I was determined to become a home buyer, to fulfill the American dream for me and for my family. That was like my number one priority in life. I would go on HUD Home Store. This is circa 2010. I would go on there and you could scroll for pages upon pages upon pages of homes that were in foreclosure, that were for sale, and that were just sitting there for months at a time. Now if something hits HUD Home Store, it's sold just like that. There is no inventory. There's no foreclosure inventory. It just doesn't exist. And so we are in such a different dynamic, and there are people that make a lot of money writing these doomer articles because there are readers, there are people dying for this. They are dying for a home crash, right? They're dying for us to have an implosion of the real estate market so that they can finally buy their home. But that's a problem too, right? Because the economy goes where the housing market goes. And part of why the economy has felt so bad to a lot of people the past few years is that the housing market hasn't been very good. We've been in a housing recession for several years now. And even though we're not in a economic recession in the entire economy, you hear people all the time complaining about the economy. And it's because a lot of the fundamentals in the economy are bad. And a lot of that you can trace back to the housing market. I'm not going to get into the weeds on any of that, but that's true. And so where I'm going with that is you run into a situation where the people that want this housing market crash to happen would probably end up having to take pay cuts, maybe lose their job, or maybe be in another situation where maybe lending gets a lot tighter, because that happens in recessions as well. They might not even be able to afford a loan. There's no guarantee that if a home crash happened, that any of these people watching the home crash would be able to even buy a home. A lot would have to happen for them to be able to do so. So I'm sick and tired of this narrative. There are so many narratives out there that just have me angry. And again, this is my show. This is not a Greenville specific episode, even though it, like I said, I'm talking through. I always tell you guys, whenever I do an episode that's like on a meta level, right? We're talking about something that's about the entire housing market here. It is through a Greenville lens, right? If you're in Louisiana, if you're in Lafayette, Louisiana right now, and you're seeing home prices dropping 10% year over year, different ball game, right? That is a different ball game from some of the numbers that I've seen coming out of the state of Louisiana. Now, I actually saw some numbers recently that maybe they've turned the corner on that, and maybe maybe they had the correction that they needed, and now they're going back in the right direction. I don't know. That's not my market. I'm a Greenville realtor. I try to keep track of nationwide trends to a certain extent, but I don't follow them, that closely if they don't impact my direct market. But all of this is specifically through a Greenville lens, but I'm just tired of it. I'm tired of hearing it. I'm tired of seeing it. I'm tired of these people getting, like, some of these people are getting on national news for their views. They're writing books saying that this crash is coming, and it's just all a bunch of baloney. And quite frankly, I'm sick of it. We need to have, you guys know I'm a data person. And if you just go out there just spouting off all of these vibes and all of these feelings and all this anger, but you're then drawing conclusions that the real estate market is going to do something or not do something on the basis of your vibes and anger, no, miss me with that. I need some data. And the data tells me that, unfortunately, the millennials and the Zoomers that are locked out of housing right now, listen, you guys are going to have to figure something out that isn't waiting for the real estate apocalypse to happen. Because the real estate apocalypse might not be good for you when it happens. Probably won't be good for you when it happens, if and when it happens. And it might not happen for a long, long time. We don't know. 2008 style crashes don't happen every other year. It's pretty rare, right? That was like a once in a generation recession, maybe twice in a generation recession, but it's pretty rare. So if you're locked out, listen, I feel bad for you. Don't hear this and hear that I'm angry at you for being locked out and that I'm not sympathetic. I'm angry at you for shutting off your brain and focusing on your anger rather than on trying to figure out a solution. What are the solutions? Well, one solution is to move to a more affordable market. Yeah, some people might have to do that. Another solution, obviously, is to be willing to put a lower down payment, right? Maybe if the cash to close is your problem, you might have to put a lower down payment. Another solution, you might have to look at loan options that maybe you haven't considered before, right? Maybe instead of a 30-year loan, you're looking at a 5-year ARM, 7-year ARM, something like that. Maybe you just have to start with a starter home. Throw out your old conceptions, and maybe you're buying a mobile home. Guess what? Mobile homes do appreciate. At least in Greenville, they do. Why? Because the land that they're on appreciates. And so as the land appreciates, the home appreciates with the land, right? Because you don't sell one without the other. I mean, you can take the mobile home that's been detitled and you can retitle it as a motor vehicle and then move it off the land. Sure, you can do that, but not what we're talking about here. So there are some things that you could do, right? Obviously, there's always the getting a second job and all of that. Nobody wants to do that, and I'm not recommending to anyone to do that, right? That's tough. That's a difficult life to have to live. But for sure, the answer is not to become a keyboard warrior and to be click-clacking away, telling people about how Even though supply is going up, doesn't matter. We don't need supply to go up. We just need prices to come down, and they're going to. Oh, they're going to. No. Get your head out of the sand. Stop being delusional, and actually pay attention to what is really happening in the real world. Start listening to real experts rather than these armchair economists that have no idea what they're talking about, that are not analyzing the real estate market, that start with their conclusion before they start looking at the data, and then try to warp the data to fit their own conclusions. I don't do that. You guys, if you guys have been watching or listening to the show for a long time, you know that I let the data inform my content 100% of the time. And there's a reason for that. It's because I don't come in on here to tell people what they want to hear, or to tell myself what I want to hear. I want to actually know what is happening. What's happening in the market? Is it a buyer's market? That's great for my buyers. Is it a seller's market? That's great for my sellers. Listen, I'm okay either way. Now, a market crashes, it hurts, right? But I've got a lot of investor clients that would start going crazy if the market crashed. I'm going to be fine either way. And I don't mean that in a braggadocious or a conceited way. I'm just saying, my point in saying that is that I don't have an agenda here, but these other people do. These other people putting out all this content and getting these YouTube videos with millions of views, and the YouTube videos are monetized, so they're getting money from all of those views. Those are the people you need to watch out for, because they are twisting the data or selectively using some data over others, or in some cases using no data at all. Stay away from those people. All right, that's the end of my rant. Thank you guys for watching or for listening. Love each and every one of you. Please like, rate, review, subscribe. Check out the show notes, the show description for my contact info if you need a realtor in the Greenville area. And we will talk again next time.